Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel. My name is Jer and we are going to be continuing our discussion about Dead Like Me. We are on season 2, episode 5. This episode is titled Hurry. I gotta say, this is an excellent episode. So the general theme starts off by talking about time. Georgia mentions that life is one big race and how everybody is just trying to get to the next thing, and she tells a couple stories about when she was a kid, how she was always looking forward to the next thing, whether that be high school or college, and then death finally hit and the finish line was 18. While this episode discusses time and how each one of the characters uses their time, I think it also is really trying to tell a story about patience. And we do kind of see how each character navigates that route and how they get where they need to go by utilizing their time the best. And we get a lot of anecdotes through this episode to help us understand that. I'm gonna go ahead and just kind of break down each character based off of the amount of time that they had in this episode. I feel like what this episode does a really good job at, and what I really like about it, is that each character gets these small little breaks in between each other, so it feels like we get a whole bunch of them, when in fact we're getting maybe, 5 minutes of time on camera with them. Mason is told right from the get-go, don't be late, don't mess up. And we had already seen in this season that Rube has told Mason that he messes things up and he's not great at doing his job. So Mason is trying to make a very concentrated effort this episode to try to be on time. We see him struggling through the entire episode to try to get where he's trying to go. And in the end, he gets to his reap just barely on time. He does realize how stupid he is, that even though he's always being told he is a screw up and that he can't do things right, when he tries to do things the way that everybody else does, it doesn't work for him. What works for him is his old standby, which is showing up at the time the person's supposed to die and doing his thing. So Roxy has a reap at the airport at prime time traffic. And when she gets there, there's this French woman who is furious that her bags have been delayed because they didn't get where they were supposed to go. And now airport security is trying to sort through all the bags so that everybody can get their stuff and get where they need to go. Roxy comments about this particular security agent. His name is William, and she notices how patient he is and how calm he is, and they have a discussion about that. And he mentions that he hasn't always been patient, he hasn't always been calm, and being nice hasn't always been his inclination, but he's learned that that's sometimes the best way to do things. I really wish that William had more appearances in the season. I think he's a really nice counterbalance to Roxy, especially the things that he teaches her in this episode. I think she learns a lot from him. He thankfully is not the target of her reap. It's this French woman who has a very comedic death, and I think that is a nice juxtaposition with the very tragic death that we get from the next character, which is Daisy. So Daisy goes to speed dating, and this is probably one of my favorite storylines throughout the entire series. Daisy is very impatient. Daisy gets there, she just wants to know who her reap is, and she's asking each person at this speed dating what their last name is, if their first name starts with a J, because she's just trying to find her reap, and none of them want to play along, and she's just increasingly getting more frustrated. She's starting to read, she's starting to call people out. She tells one person that she senses they have an obsession with aliens. One of my favorite moments from her is when this guy comes up and he's wearing an ascot. She says, a note about the ascot: you have to be really rich or really stylish to pull that off, unless you're gay. Laura Harris is an incredible actress, and these moments that she has in the speed dating portion are just brilliant. The way that she reacts to each one of these guys, she has so much charisma. She is a true star. When she does eventually meet her reap, you can tell they have some type of connection before she even finds out that he's her target. She has this moment where she is like, I kind of like this guy, and you can tell that they have a spark. And as soon as he mentions that his last name is the one that she's looking for, she gets this spark in her eyes, that almost, oh crap moment. And again, it's this brilliant actor move that she does, and it's so subtle, but you could tell that her heart just dropped. And she writes this guy's name down. His name is James, and she finds out that he fell off the top of the building and ended up dying. But we get to see another sweet moment with Daisy, like we got to see with her previous reap. Daisy has this really sweet moment. Daisy apparently took him out on some type of date. And I think that is such a sweet moment because he had gone to speed dating 17 times. He never met anybody that he connected with. Here he was connecting with this girl, and then he died. So she did something nice for him, or at least that's what I'm gonna tell myself happened, is that she took him out on a date. Then our next characters that we're gonna talk about are gonna be Reggie and Joy. Now, they have some really interesting moments and some really interesting subtle character development that's happening. We're seeing, first off with Reggie, that she's starting to care about her appearance. We saw that in the last episode when they were shopping, that she's having these moments where she's actually caring about her identity and what she looks like. She's caring what other people are saying about her and how they're perceiving her. She is being recruited into band because Joy wants her to, but she doesn't want to because she's gonna look like a dweeb and she doesn't want to look like that. We saw this moment where she was looking at herself in the reflection of the butter glass, and she just really is not liking how she looks, and she's wanting to change that up. She says the kids call her Harriet Potter because of her glasses. She doesn't want to wear them anymore. She thinks the band uniform is stupid and kids are gonna make fun of her. And she is kind of losing her patience with how people are treating her. And now with Joy, we're seeing her crack. We already saw some of that in the last episode. We are seeing these breaks from her where she's not keeping it all together like she used to. When she had to, when it was the only thing she had, she kept everything together. And now she's letting all these pieces fall apart. Now that she doesn't have to kind of meticulously hold it all in, she's falling apart, so to speak. And maybe this will be good for her because then she can start to rebuild. We're seeing her patience slowly get whittled away by Clancy being late to the appointment, by people asking her stupid questions like why she's still wearing her wedding ring. We're seeing her lose her patience with Reggie, who is just so desperately trying to be seen, and Joy is not having it. She's not having it with anybody because she's self-actualizing right now. As much as I would love to talk about Rube last, he is the next one we're going to talk about. And again, he has some major moments that actually give me goosebumps a little bit. He doesn't have any reaps today. He is going to the post office and he's there to pick up something that we're not quite sure what it is. The line's really long and Rube tries to be patient. This woman in the line starts harassing him with questions and he just goes to the back of the line because he doesn't want to deal with it. Rube has been on this earth for so long and he's done his thing for so long. He doesn't have time for kinks in the system. When Georgia was messing everything up in the first season and was constipating him, he didn't have time for it. He just cut it out of his life and didn't want to deal with it, and he walked away from it. And that's how we constantly see Rube deal with stressors. He just doesn't deal with it. And he's always putting things in a little box and walking away from it. And that's what we saw here. When another person came and constipated the system, the woman who tried to cut in line, we get another one of those fabulous Rube moments where he asks her if everybody in line is an asshole. And she says, no. And he says, great, so it's just you. And in this episode, we see again, like what's happening with Joy, we see that breaking down and cracking, because when he finally gets his package that he came there to get, he finds out that it's something that was delivered 80 whole years ago, and it's been in the dead letter office for a very long time. When he opens it up, there is a little note that's inside, and it's addressed to someone named Rosie, and it says, this is for you and your mother. And he peels through it, and there's tons of money. And when Georgia sees it, she asks if he knocked over a bank, and she asks if it's even real money, and he says that it was real money at one point. And this is a very interesting context clue, because I know I've mentioned before, my personal theory is that Rube robbed a bank and he got killed in the process of either returning or robbing it. And this kind of furthers that narrative, but we find this crack that happens in Rube, and he is not paying attention as much. He gets really frustrated at the post office. When he goes to leave from their Waffle House, he almost forgets his binder. That's an extension of his body at this point. Rube keeps that so close to him. None of the other Reapers can even get close enough to touch it, and he almost forgot it. We're seeing Rube crack. We're seeing him change. And this is one of my biggest regrets, that there was never a third season, because there's so much to unpack about Rube that we never get to see further on. Lastly, or at least second to last, we are going to talk about Georgia. She again talks in the beginning of the episode about how she's always been looking towards the next thing. As the episode goes on, transitioning between herself and with Millie, we see at Happy Time that Dolores is possibly going to be getting a raise. And there's this guy, his name is Ed Barfin, which is a horrendous last name. He is there to monitor Happy Time's efficiency. He's clocking everything. He's clocking how long it takes for people to microwave their food. He's clocking how long it takes for Millie to go to the bathroom, all in this effort to help efficiency. And as someone who has worked in a place where efficiency is important, it's always the worst when someone's timing you and checking you. I understand the importance of it, and I understand why efficiency matters, especially to a corporation, especially to a place like Happy Time, because you don't want your workers just sitting around goofing off, wasting your money. And that's one of the big things that's echoed in the Happy Time segment, is that time is money. And this guy, Ed, is here to make sure that they're using their money and their resources as efficiently and as properly as possible. So I get it, but it sucks, especially for someone like George, who has chronically always been late, who chronically has just not really cared about time. And she's starting to become a different person, and she's starting to look at the world differently. And she's even kind of pushing Dolores, like, why are we caring so much about this? I know that you want your money, I know you want your bag, but why are we caring so much about this and kind of dehumanizing the process? Shouldn't we be Happy Time? It's an interesting moment for her. And Dolores doesn't really seem thrilled about it either, but Dolores wants more money. She works very hard and she deserves it. We get to meet a very interesting character in Happy Time. His name is Ted, or otherwise known as The Ted. Very sad that this character is not an ongoing character or a recurring character that we get to see more often. Uh-oh, my USB box overheated and it looks like I'm gonna have to throw that one out. I'm glad that it short-circuited rather than burn down the house. The Ted. The Ted is very interesting. He's funny. I would love to have seen him more, but you know, such as Happy Time where it's all temps. George makes a comment in one of the sections that even though time knows how to fly, it also knows how to crawl. And this is something that we have kind of seen echoed before with George. She makes another comment later that a lot of times we're looking forward to what's happening next rather than living in the now. Almost nobody lives in the now is what she says. And even some people are constantly looking back to the things that they didn't do. And it flashes to Rube sitting in a park looking over his package. And this is an interesting commentary because we're seeing that happen with a lot of our characters. We're seeing that happen with Joy as well. And we saw in the episode where they were all doing their self-evaluations that Daisy is sad about something. This is something that we constantly are seeing. They're always looking back. They're always looking forward. They're not ever living in the now. And Georgia mentions that she's tired of doing that. She wants to live in what's happening right now. She wants to think more about time, be more on time, and not be so late and just kind of letting life fly by her. So she gets to her Reap. This guy, his last name is Hart. His license plate reads Heart Attack. He is in this Mercedes. He's credited as Mercedes guy, and he's shown in the cold open. He's shown throughout the entire episode in these flashes where he's yelling at some assistant on the phone. He seems to be very wealthy. He's going on some type of vacation, and he is very particular about the details. He's very impatient. He's honking at everyone. At one point, he almost hits Reggie with his car while she's walking across the street in her band uniform. This guy is featured throughout the entire episode, which is crazy because he's been so late, and yet we see him starting out the day presumably around 8 or 9 a.m. and he's been driving until 5-ish. So he's been driving to wherever he's been trying to go or whatever he's been trying to do. He's been driving all day long. So this guy hasn't been making good use of his time, but it's interesting to see him throughout the entire episode and how he's navigating life. And in the end, he ends up getting hit by a bus. He doesn't have a heart attack like his license plate would imply, but he has this moment where he sits down with George at the end and is like, let me have some time. I'll let you know when I'm ready. There's really no hurry because, you know, now that I'm dead, I've got all the time in the world. And it's interesting because it parallels how Georgia is feeling, that she never really lived in the moment and now she's trying to. This guy was always thinking about what was next and what was going to happen when he got on his vacation. He wasn't living in the now, which is why he almost ran into Reggie, which is why he always was hitting traffic and why he was getting so impatient, is he wasn't thinking about what was happening right now. That's why he got hit by the bus, because he got out and was impatient. Again, echoing that general theme of patience throughout this episode. So finally, my favorite quote of this episode is from Daisy. They're talking in the beginning about rushing and hurrying, and Daisy says, "I never rush. If I see someone running, I assume they're a loser." And then George asks, "What if they're a runner?" And she says, "Even then, especially then." And there's one more moment where she's standing on the rooftop with James, and he tells her that she was the most beautiful girl in the room. And she replies so matter-of-factly, "I know." Daisy's iconic. Daisy is a gay icon. Daisy is everything. Before I sign off and before I head out, I would like you all to know, if you are enjoying these, I am actually working on a short story or a long story. I'm introducing it in parts. It's all on Wattpad. It's about Grim Reapers. I was very inspired by Dead Like Me, but I wanted to take obviously a different route and perspective to it. That information is going to be in the little description bar below. You can feel free to check that out. It's free. You don't have to pay anything to look at it. And I am trying to set it in the now in modern California. So it should be pretty interesting. I'm taking a lot of those cues from Dead Like Me of doing dark comedy and trying to be humorous while also tackling dark subjects. So hopefully you enjoy it. If you are enjoying this series, if you're enjoying Dead Like Me, if you would like a little bit more from me, that's where you can go and consume that. And let me know if you like it. I would love to talk about that more if any of you are interested in doing such. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys next time in the next video.